The Elizabethan age of English literature coincides with the reign of Elizabeth I from 1558 to 1603. However, many critics expand the term to include the changes that started to take place in England and therefore in the English literature since the Renaissance, precisely from the death of Chaucer, that means 1400, and continued. The Elizabethan age continued until the death of Shakespeare in 1616. So, the Elizabethan age, sometimes if you expand the term, began in 1400 and ended in 1616. That means it lasted for more than 200 years. Yet the second half of the 16th century was significant to the English literature, and in the very particular sense of the word, to the Elizabethan era, second half of the 15th century. During this period, the great Queen Elizabeth remained on the English throne from 1558 to 1603, and the distinguished English playwrights Shakespeare composed his immortal dramas during this period, 58 to 1603. Though he died, Shakespeare died in 1616, and he wrote his great tragedies after 1603, after the death of Elizabeth. During this time, medieval tradition was blended with Renaissance optimism. The Elizabethan era, which is generally considered one of the golden age in English literature, was a great boom in English literature. William Shakespeare emerged from this period as a poet and a playwright never seen before. Lyric poetry, prose, and drama were the major styles of literature that flowered during the Elizabethan era. Some important writers of Elizabethan age include William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, who was born before Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, Sir Walter Raleigh, and Ben Jonson. Theatre and poetry were the dominant forms of literature during this period. And drama, yes, drama was at its heyday during the Elizabethan era. The Jacobian, now let's talk about Jacobian age. Jacobian age of English literature coincides with the reign of James I from 1603 to 1625. The Jacobian era was the period in English and Scottish history that coincides with the reign of James VI of Scotland, who also inherited the crown of England in 1603 as James I. So these two Jameses are the same, James VI and James I. The Jacobian era succeeds the Elizabethan era and precedes the Caroline era. So during the Jacobian age, the literature became sophisticated, somber, and conscious of social abuse and rivalry. The Jacobian age produced rich prose and drama, as well as the King James's translation of the Bible, a very famous translation. Shakespeare and Johnson wrote during the Jacobean age, as well as John Donne, Francis Bacon and Thomas Middleton. These were also the great writers of Jacobean era. Sometimes we call it metaphysical age also. Now let's talk about the Caroline age of English literature, which refers to the period in English and Scottish history named for the 24-year reign of Charles I, which began in 1625 and ended in 1649. The term is derived from Carolus, the Latin for Charles. The Caroline era followed the Jacobean era, the reign of Charles's father James I and James VI, who were the same persons. Overlapped with the English Civil War. English Civil War started in 1642 and ended in 1651. The Caroline era was dominated by growing religious, political, social discord between the king and the supporters termed the Royalist Party and the parliamentarian opposition that evolved in response to particular aspect of Charles's rule. So at one side there was the king and his supporters, and at the other side his opponents in the parliament. The writers of this age wrote with refinement and elegance. This era produced a circle of poets known as Cavalier poets, C-A-V-A-L-I-E-R, Cavalier poets. And the dramatists of this age were the last to write in the Elizabethan tradition, because after that the theatres were banned in the Commonwealth era, in the Puritan age, and writing of dramas or plays, was totally banned or discouraged. So the Commonwealth period, also known as the Puritan interregnum, is also known as the age of Milton in English literature. It includes the literature produced during the time of Puritan leader Oliver Cromwell. (1649 to 1660). This period produced the political writings of John Milton, Thomas Hobbes, political treatise, Leviathan, well-known treatise, you must have heard this name, Leviathan, and the prose of Andrew Marvell. In September of 1642, the Puritans closed theatres on moral and religious grounds. For the next 18 years, the theatres remained closed, accounting for the lack of drama produced during this time period. So whenever there is religious fanaticism, this was the age of religious fanaticism, and so wherever there is a religious fanaticism, like in Afghanistan during Taliban's reign or any other country, theatres are attacked. Its followers, dubbed Puritans, lived by a moral and religious code that not only influenced their own lives but sought to impact the lives of everyone around them. Puritan literature relied on a religious rather than entertainment theme. It was like the Taliban age in English literature. So religious themes were encouraged. Puritans didn't believe in writing for entertainment. Rather, they thought of writing as a tool to reach people with the story of God. Works focused on realistic messages, illustrating the idea that everyone was born a sinner and that their salvation had been predetermined, a concept known as predestination. So, the religious theme was supported, was encouraged, and the theatres were banned, were closed. During the interregnum, England had been dominated by Puritan literature and the intermittent presence of official censorship. For example, Milton's Areopagitica and his later retraction of the statement. So, all literary activities, like literature was not being written for pleasure. Art for art's sake concept was not popular in those days. The last years of the interregnum were turbulent, as were the last years of the Restoration period, and those who did not go into exile were called upon to change their religious beliefs more than once during this period. So, this Commonwealth period or Puritan age, let's talk about this age in detail.